on calculating income. That's on that loanofficeracademy.info. And if you have ever used Meetup, Meetup is kind of a cool app that you can find stuff going on in and around wherever you are. And so Meetup, we've got a LO Academy site on Meetup as well. So what do we talk about in this program right here? Basically, from the pre-qualification process, what docs do we need at any given time? How to calculate income, that was last week. Today, we are going to talk about the pre-approval process. Mach 1, which is a Jet Direct specific tool. I know some of you are not with Jet. That's okay. We love you anyway. So Mach 1 is a proprietary loan commitment program that we offer. And, we can talk about it next week, and it may be something worth listening in on. We've had incredible success getting offers accepted using that tool. Hey, I've got one of the guys that I thought was going to be on the call calling me. He may be asking, hold on one second. Hey, Chris. Good, man. We just started that LO Academy meeting. Okay, yeah, I was just wondering I was answering only just in case you were trying to dial in. But we'll catch up later. Got it. Okay. All right. Okay, bye. Okay. He was calling to tell me he couldn't make it. Guys, you can just email me for that. But so that Mach 1, then the kind of the under contract, now what? That's gonna be holy crap, we got a house under contract. Now what do we do? What's the next steps in our process? Rates and locking. And guys, right now that's pretty important, right? Because there's a lot of movement and turbulence in the interest rate market. And then of course, CD and closing costs. So how to communicate to your borrower when they look at that thing and they see all these fees and these costs and stuff like that. How do you communicate to your borrower? How do you make sure you're calculating them correctly? Business development, and then guidelines and programs. So that's what you can expect here. We'll be continuing to record these sessions so that you can get them on the website. I just sort of turn them into YouTube videos. Okay, so that's what's cooking here. And then for those of you who don't know me, there's a little bit about me. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Michael. Sound like I'm in a AA meeting or something, but we're not. I'm drinking seltzer water, so there you go. But I've been doing this for a couple of minutes, and it's my passion to kind of help people grow and learn and develop. So contact information for those of you who don't have it: my email address, my direct number, my office number, and of course the WhatsApp number as well. If you're not part of the WhatsApp group, I encourage you to join the WhatsApp chat group. If you don't know what it is, WhatsApp is we gotta mute you, Lydia. I'm so sorry. WhatsApp is a chat group. Basically, it's a secure communication system. Okay, so I'm gonna hit this really quick again, guys, every day, because PALE is where it's at. The PALE conversation is your pre-approval process: property, assets, income, and liabilities. We are on step 4 of the Loan Officer Academy process, and that is the pre-approval process, which means we did PALE, we pre-qualified them, we sent a document request. Maybe they did an online loan app and sent us at least some income documents. So now what? Guys, you're going to hear me say this about everything we do. A good pre-approval starts with the PALE conversation. So make sure you have accurate and valid income calculations, which we talked about last week. So you should have gotten income documents. You should have calculated it. You should know there's no weird gaps or problems or issues. You should know everything is pretty straightforward with that. Guys, this issuing a pre-approval is a special responsibility. It's a sacred responsibility. And by that, I mean, very simply, I know some of you are realtors. as well. Imagine being a realtor and imagine somebody telling you, yes, this borrower can buy a $500,000 house, and you go drive them around, show houses, set up listing appointments, make an offer. The borrower pays for an inspection, pays for an appraisal. Your loan gets submitted, and the processor works on it, setup works on it, everybody works on it, and it goes into underwriting. The underwriter says, dude, where the hell did you come up with this income? This doesn't make any sense. I'm going to have to suspend this loan because your back ratio is 75%. Well, everybody that's been involved with that process, especially the realtor and especially your borrower, all their money's been wasted. They just wasted all that time, and they just wasted all that money. This is very, very, very important. Please don't mess it up. And remember also, during this time, this is where you're building your letter of explanation, or as we tend to do, we put that information into your loan origination system. LOS means loan origination system. So during this process, you're going to start making notes that are going to go, when you submit your loan, they're going to go into that system so that you can do it. So the underwriter knows what the heck you're talking about. Okay. So when I started in the business, I had a horrible manager. He literally, my first loan, handed me the FHA guidelines, the HUD guidelines, which was about a 4-inch thick binder, and told me to figure it out. But back in 2002, when I started, he told me something that was really important that I still use today. He told me, you got to learn how to say yes fast, but say no even faster. So what do we need to do in order to say yes fast or to say no? We need to make sure we understand their income. We need to make sure there's no hidden credit issues. By that, I mean, if they've got student loans that are in deferment and the payment is showing as 0, and you don't notice that and become aware of that and adjust for that in your debt to income ratios, that's going to bite you in the butt. Hidden credit issues. If it's an FHA loan and they've got a 630 or a 640 credit score, but they have $4,000 in collections, you have to, unless they're medical collections, you have to attribute a payment to those collections based on the balances. So if you didn't, your ratios are going to be wrong. You got to make sure they have enough cash to close. Guys, I have literally had customers tell me, when I say, okay, listen, here's what we're going to need, this much money. And then, they'll say, okay, yeah, no problem. And this is still early in the process. Maybe I haven't seen their bank statements, but I'm giving them a ballpark number, right? And they'll say, that's okay. Then I get their bank statements, and the bank statements show whatever, $800. And I needed $30,000. And I start saying, oh, hold on a minute. Well, we're going to take a cash advance from a credit card. Or we're going to have, maybe gift funds or something like that we didn't account for. You've got to ask the question, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you're going to need approximately $30,000 for this transaction. I know you haven't sent me your bank statements yet, but do you have those funds available? We sure do. Okay, awesome. Are they in a bank? What if it's cash sitting in their safe? Happened. I'm not kidding. I have a transaction right now. I just got the conditional loan approval today. They have $60,000. Who's on here? Okay, Gina can ignore me. There's nobody else from corporate on here, but Gina, you can block your ears for a second. They had $60,000 cash, and we had to come up with a creative plan in order to source those funds into the transaction. So be aware. You have to know about those things in order to have the plan. So ask these questions. These are hidden issues, right? What if you pre-approve them? You say yes, you pre-approve them, and your loan origination software doesn't have an interest rate in the qual window. So now all of a sudden, oh, and how do I know that? Because I've done it. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking at the ratios and it looks okay until you add it, because it's not calculating the payment of the mortgage, of the new mortgage. Then all of a sudden you put an interest rate in there and you're at 80% loan to debt to income ratio. So make sure you're using the correct rate. Or what if you had, in today's market, what if you had 4%? Because you started talking with these people 2 months ago. And now all of a sudden those tight ratios became, non-functional ratios. So you got to pay attention. And of course, you have to understand the program and the guidelines that you're aiming towards. So yes, learn how to say yes fast, but also please be careful when you say yes, that you're right. Number one, that you're right. And number two, if it's not going to be a deal, you got to let everybody know. You got to communicate. All right, let's talk about the pre-approval process. So ratios. Let's assume, we got to make some assumptions. Let's assume we have accurate and conservative income, right? So in other words, we know what our income really is, and we're not going out on a limb and saying, well, I hope I can use $1,200 a month of overtime because they told me they almost always work it. You have to have accurate but conservative income calculations, number one, in order to calculate some ratios. Number two, you got to know what the liabilities are. Okay, if they have lower credit, you really need to look at a credit report before you start calculating this. Because if they have lower credit, there may be a reason they have lower credit, and that reason may be collections that have to be factored in. Okay, so make sure you have accurate liabilities. Make sure you're accurately estimating the new house payment. The new house payment. We're going to talk about each of these things in just a second. Because if you're starting to calculate their debt to income ratio in order to determine a pre-approval, if you're using garbage, you're going to get garbage. Okay? Is that, if there's a question, please throw it in the chat. I'm always asking for feedback and everybody's muted. So, but these are the steps you need to kind of make sure. You got to know the income, you got to know the liabilities, and you got to know the new house payment in order to properly start calculating ratios. If you have paper and want to take notes, here's where you might want to think about doing it. We're going to talk about a little bit of napkin math right now. Guys, this is a process you should be able to do during the pre-qual on the back of a napkin in a crowded bar. Okay? Now, we're just going to talk about FHA right now, just because I want to keep it simple. So let's talk about ratios. Front ratio, back ratio. If you have a way to hit that little button to show hands, by a show of hands, and if you don't have a way to show your hands, say something in the chat room. By a show of hands or a yes in the chat, who knows what front and back ratios mean? Who knows what, in this case, 43 and 50 means? Or who doesn't know? Anybody? Nobody's answering anything. Am I muted? Somebody unmute and say, I don't know, or I do know.
Talking about your monthly income based on without your credit cards and all that.
Perfect. Okay. Front ratio. I see some of my no's. Thank you, guys. Love you guys. Okay. So the front ratio, in this case, 43, is your income and the housing payment. It's that housing payment as a percentage of your income. So in the case of an FHA loan, and these are DU numbers, not loan guidelines for manual underwrite, because all we do is DU these days. So in other words, that mortgage payment, that total housing payment, which is principal and interest, taxes, insurance, HOA, if there's a CDD or anything like that, those are all included, that total housing payment. And you're going to divide that by your income. That's your front ratio. So your front ratio, that housing payment shouldn't be more than 43% of their income. The back ratio is the new housing payment plus all their other debt payments, all their other liability payments. And in that case, shouldn't be more than 50% on an FHA loan, unless they have excellent credit. You can get it approved up to 56% in DU, but I don't want you to plan for that. I just want you to use estimated numbers. So 43 and 50, 43 and 50. Those are kind of your magic numbers. If they have poor credit, you got to reduce the ratios. Guess what? This is art. This part is an art, not a science. How much do you reduce the ratios? Hell if I know. It's going to depend. How bad is their credit? You know, how tight is their, you know, do they have other assets? Do they have reserves? Things like that. So if they have shaky credit, truthfully, I would not do a napkin pre-qual in this sense. I would go to DU. I would have the loan in the system and I would run desktop underwriter, okay? But I want to prepare you and equip you to be able to do this on the fly, but at least have an idea if you've got a deal before you're issuing a pre-approval letter, right? Now, so income, check this out. You now know their income, right? You don't know a housing payment. So if I'm going to do napkin math, okay, Valerie asked, what's the baseline credit score for 4350? I would say mid sixes, 640, 50. You know, if they tell you, yeah, I've got pretty good credit, I know I'm in the high sixes. You know, what's it called? Credit Karma told me I'm a 680. I'd probably say you're probably okay. And you might ask them, hey, do you happen to have any collections on your credit report? Do you have anything weird that you know about? And guys, if they know, they'll probably tell you. You know, you can't really ever 100% trust people, but they should know pretty well. So assuming mid sixes. So now I'm going to take their income. Remember, I calculated their monthly income, and that's what we did last week. I'm going to take that number and I'm going to multiply it by my front ratio. So we're going to do this practically on the next slide. I'm just giving you the formulas now. Okay. So my monthly income times my front ratio. Okay. Now the back ratio is my income times the back ratio minus the monthly liabilities. Okay. So follow me. I know this might be a little bit confusing. The income times the back ratio minus the monthly liabilities, whichever is lower, that's your proposed housing payment. Whichever is lower, that's your proposed housing payment. So if this first number, the income times the front ratio is 3,000 and the income times the back ratio minus monthly liabilities is 2,000, 2,000 is basically my max housing payment. Okay. Guys, this is the Mona frickin' Lisa. This is art. This is not science. We are not running DU at this second. So this is, you pulled over to the side of the road, you're on the phone with the customer, leaning over your console, scribbling down, or you're at the bar at a restaurant, you're at the bar and a realtor's there and asking you questions. Okay. But every good loan officer should be comfortable doing this. Okay. This is something to practice. So let's try it. Let's pretend our income is $6,000. Let's assume we have good credit. Let's assume we have $700 of monthly liabilities. Who's first? Who can give me in the chat room what our max ratio, or I'm sorry, what our max housing payment would be in this scenario, using 4350, using 43 front, 50 back. I'm gonna wait. If somebody has the Jeopardy music, they can play it. Okay, somebody said 2580. Oh, Valerie said that. Okay, does anybody want to second guess Valerie's quick, fast calculations? Okay, Valerie, awesome. You are 50% of the way there, because if you remember, we have to do both calculations. Okay. In other words, we need to take that monthly income. We need
It's
to,
2,300.
oh, look at you, right? Okay. So Valerie did the first part. She took the income times the front ratio. Soma did the second part, income times the front ratio minus the liabilities, or the back ratio minus the liabilities. Guess what? The lower number of those two, the back ratio, is only 2,300. So if we did what we're going to do here coming up in a second, we would give them too much house to qualify for. So you have to do both of those formulas. I'm going to go back here for a second. You have to do this front ratio formula, and then you have to do this back ratio formula, and whichever is lower is your proposed housing payment. So if you did that again, you would come out with 2,300, not 2,580 as your proposed housing payment. Now, we know their income. We have a ballpark idea of their credit. We now know their housing payment. What's that housing payment going to consist of? P&I. Who knows what P&I is? What's that?
Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
That's PITI. So far P&I, right? Our payment consists of
Principal and
principal. Yes, sir. Now, round up when you're checking your loan amount. So what do I mean by that? If you have one of these calculators, one of these, it's hard to show on here because I'm in this stupid background. A qualifier, or you use a calculator on the app on your, on your phone or whatever. When you calculate your principal and interest payment, and I'm going to show you how to do it in a second, but let's imagine we came out with 2,142 as my max payment. I'm going to turn that max payment into 2,150, round up. So you got principal and interest, you got taxes and insurance. What are those taxes and insurance in your area, or taxes in your area? In Florida, I almost always use, or in Orlando, Central Florida, I almost always use 1.5. Many times it's lower, but I use 1.5. In other words, 1.5 means if my house payment, if my house is 300,000, I'm going to multiply 300,000 by 1.5%, and I'm going to divide it by 12. That's my taxes. Okay. Homeowners insurance and homeowners association is also included in your payment. How much are they in your area? Are you in a flood prone area and have to include flood insurance? Are you in Florida and insurance is higher here than many other places in the country? Are they putting down a small amount? You have mortgage insurance or private mortgage insurance. Okay. So if it's FHA, you're going to take 0.85% of the base loan amount and divide it by 12. And I know I'm going through this fast. I don't expect you to know how to do this or remember it at this moment. This video is going to be on the website. And when you start playing with it, I encourage you to go back and revisit this a little bit. But these are the items that are included in your payment. Okay. If it's conventional, how do you calculate PMI? SWAG. If you don't know what that means, it's a scientific wild ass guess. So you'll start to get the feel for it. That's a little bit of art. It's hard to calculate an exact number because it's going to depend on their credit. It's going to depend on the debt to income ratio. It's going to depend on how much is the down payment. So calculating that is a little more complicated. So keep in mind, if you don't know, you're working this thing. Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. If you keep in mind, if you're doing this, this is art. You're going back and forth little by little. Okay. Now, if I just got my max payment, right? I did this page over here. And I said, okay, my max payment is 2,300. All right, now, guess what? I've got my max payment. Now what? I'm going to use my mortgage calculator to determine a potential loan amount. So I'm going to take my mortgage calculator. If you've got the qualifier 3 that I've talked about a couple times, the Real Estate Master qualifier calculator, it's literally got a button on there. I don't know if you can't, of course you can't see this because it's invisible there. I put it next to me like a little advertisement here, but it's got a payment, a term, and an interest button. If you plug in payment, term, and interest, you can calculate the loan amount. Now, what does that mean though? What just happened? I have my loan amount. What if my loan amount is $300,000? Okay. That payment I just did is only principal and interest on this calculator. Now I know I have $300,000. I can say 1.5% of that divided by 12 is my property taxes of that total payment, that 2,300. So I'm going to subtract, I don't know, $300-400 out of that. I'm going to subtract $100 for insurance. And now I'm going to redo that process with that lower number. If that doesn't make sense, think about it this way. The payment amount that I just put in my calculator, has to be the total payment, not just principal and interest. So in order for me to figure out my principal and interest, first, I've got to come up with that number by hitting term 30, interest 6%, payment 2,300. So if I do that right now, 2,300, my loan amount is 383. But in that 2,300 is how much? Taxes. So if I say 383 times 1.5%, that's $5,000, 5,700. So $470,000 of that 2,300 is homeowners. I mean, is property tax. So I'm going to take my 2,300 minus 470 minus 100. My principal and interest is now 1,730. 1,730 payment. My new loan amount is about 288. So I'm going to say, John and Mary, we're probably good, close to $300,000. Okay. So in other words, you have to back out of that payment. You have to back out of your payment everything that isn't your principal and interest. Okay. Everything that isn't principal and interest, this, and this has to get backed out of your estimated payment for you to come up with what your purchase price is. Okay. So now that's the little process right here. Payment, term, interest on your calculator to come up with the loan amount. And I know this is complicated. I know it is. I'm teaching you napkin math, but there's a preferred method. Okay. What's the preferred method? Put the stuff in your loan origination system. Have a credit report and run DU. Okay. That's going to give you a much more accurate number. However, stay with me here for a second. In your loan origination software, you have to make sure that you put property taxes, because many of them don't calculate it automatically. You have to put homeowners insurance. Many of them don't calculate it automatically. I live in Florida, guys. I put a homeowners association every time. I put it $100 most of the time for a homeowners association, just in case. And then when they start looking at specific properties, I back it out. Okay. But this is the preferred method because you can do it quick and be right, or you can do it real fast and be wrong. I'd rather be quick and right than fast and wrong. If I'm giving my realtor a super fast answer, but it's the wrong answer, that's a problem. So I want you to understand that backstory, what we just did, napkin math. I want you to understand it because I want you to understand what's happening behind the scenes. But if I'm doing this process and I have it in my loan origination system and I run a credit report, I can run DU and I can know for a fact that it's good. I can know for a fact that you're right. Go back 2 screens, Frenchie. Where do you want me to go? This one? You can unmute yourself, bro. I'm assuming that was where you wanted me. So that's what makes up your payment.
Oh, one more screen forward.
One more screen forward, this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to use your mortgage calculator to calculate the loan amount. So let's assume we did that process and we took out of that payment taxes and insurance and mortgage insurance. Okay. And now we have that new mortgage payment. I can calculate my loan amount. And if I know they're going to they want to put down 10%, and I'm at 300,000, I can tell them you're going to probably be in the ballpark of 330. Ballpark. This is art, not science. That's your purchase price. You could probably buy a house around 330, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But that calculator, and if you don't have one of these, hit me up afterwards. I'm trying to show it to you. I apologize. This stupid background hides stuff from me. But if you don't have one of these, I suggest you get one. And there's an app for your smartphone. So if you have a question about that calculator, if you don't have a good mortgage calculator that already works for you, please let me know. Let me know in the WhatsApp group, and I'll post the information about that. Okay, so the preferred method is run DU. Do your actual loan process, run desktop underwriter, and be correct. Let's be right about it. Okay, now I got a little wisdom for you. Never rush your pre-approval. Be quick, be efficient, be smooth about it, but be certain. Okay, ask your customer a lot of questions. So remember, when is those questions? What they would be happening during your PALE conversation, right? So you're going to be asking them questions, and I mean, be nosy. Ask a lot of questions. Ask the realtor questions. If they're in a low purchase price range, are they thinking about a condo? That matters, because if they have low credit, and guys, don't assume realtors know any of this, even if they're experienced. If they have low credit and are going to have to go FHA based on their credit score or based on the amount of money they have to put down or whatever it is, be aware a lot of condos, even if they're approved for financing, maybe are not approved for FHA. FHA is much, much more difficult for condos. Conventional is a little easier. Check the rate, double check the rate, keep checking the rate, and don't quote the rate. Now, I'm saying check the rate because rates are changing very, very readily right now. Okay, so you have to know what rate you're using as you're calculating that payment. And as rates move up, the payment goes up, which means our qualifying ratio goes down. Okay, if you qualified them 2 months ago at 3% and now it's 5.5%, most likely their max is lower. Okay, so check the rate and double check the rate, and throughout the process, check the rate, but don't quote them a rate. And that's a little bit of salesmanship, but I'm going to tell you straight up, until you have a full app, and when somebody asks me, hey, what's the rates? I'm going to say, guys, ballpark in the mid 5s right now, low 6s, whatever it is at that time, right, for their scenario. But I'm going to tell them straight up, until you're under contract, none of us know, because you don't have a rate without a rate lock. So, we can't lock a rate without a property. I don't like to lock the rate without an appraisal personally. But we do in this environment, I locked rates today because for those of you who don't know, today we had a little bit of turbulence in the bond market. So if we go, I'm trying to open up a screen and I'm going to share it with you. If you don't use Mortgage News Daily, I would strongly recommend thinking about using it. And here's why. So I logged on, if you can see this screen now, this was today. The market obviously closed, but it's telling you right here, trend negative. Mortgage-backed security prices are significantly weaker so far today. They went down. I locked this morning when this opened with a little red dot. And I said, man, you know what? We've had a good run. As you can see, green is good. We've had a good run, and we're going to talk rates here another class, but we had a good run up. So I locked today before that negative market information hit us. So I personally would not quote mortgage rates to people, but at the same time, you want to make sure you're using something that's pretty accurate, right? So we're going to talk more about interest rates, but never quote the rate. Never say, yeah, you're going to be a 6% or you're going to be 5.5%, because if it's an eighth of a point higher than that, they're going to lose their mind and they're going to think you lied to them. So make sure you tell them you don't know, exactly what the rate's going to be until you have an appraisal. In fact, I go a step further than that, guys. I literally tell people when they try to push me on the rate, what do I know if they're asking a lot about rate? I know they could be a shopping person, right? They could be going out and talking to a bunch of lenders. So I'm going to tell them straight up, listen, if somebody quotes a rate for you without having a full application, without having a credit report, and without having a property and a closing date scheduled, if they quote you a rate, I personally feel like that's dishonest, or at the very least unprofessional, because they don't know what the rate's going to be. The market may change tomorrow before you're under contract, and then they lock. So I personally kind of beat that up a little bit. The disclaimer, guys, this is an estimate. As we're talking about cash to close, as we're talking about ballpark payment, if you don't say, John and Mary, this is an estimate, John and Mary, I'm not 100% sure, obviously, until we have an exact sales price and more information about the property. John and Mary, your mortgage payment's going to be in the ballpark of, $1,200 plus taxes and insurance. This is an estimate. This is an estimate. You say it over and over and over. Know your closing cost factor. Okay. So in Florida, I'm using somewhere around 2.5%. If it's an FHA loan, 2.5, even maybe 3%. Because if I have to put a point or something like that to keep the rate down a little bit, be aware, taxes and insurance, which are prepaids, are part of that number. So if you don't give a reasonable number when you're guesstimating how much cash they need to close, then if you don't know, don't tell them. Don't use a messed up number, but total cash to close is the down payment plus the closing costs and the prepaids. That gives you cash to close. So you got to sort of start to develop those numbers. How do you do it? When you get into your loan origination software, put $100,000 sales price, calculate your taxes, calculate or guesstimate your insurance, and take that number on your loan estimate that shows their total cash to close at 100% financing and divide it by the loan amount of $100,000. Multiply that by 100. It's going to start giving you an idea of what's the percentage. And then any loan you do, when you get your total, your final closing disclosure, now that was really the number. This was really what was required. Take out the down payment, look at the total cash to close minus the down payment, add back in their earnest money deposit, and come up with what's that percentage and start developing those numbers. Okay. If you don't have closing disclosures, borrow some. Other people do. Other people in your office might have them. Now, we got to communicate to our borrower. And most importantly, in my opinion, you got to communicate to the realtor. So how do we communicate? I like to communicate in writing. I might have a conversation with the realtor and the borrower and say, I'm gonna say to the realtor, hey, Bob, I think they're gonna be in the ballpark of, 300K. Okay. I think we probably get them in that 300K range. Do you feel like that's something you can find houses in? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Listen, I'm going to shoot an email to the borrower and I'm going to copy you, Mr. Realtor, with a little bit of the loan details. So put it in a text, put it in a realtor. Put it in text, put it in an email, copy the realtor. Use round numbers. Remember, if I tell somebody, listen, your cash to close is $23,468, but it's an estimate, they don't freaking believe me. If it's $28,000, I'm going to say, John and Mary, your cash to close is going to be somewhere around $30,000. Okay. It's an estimate and I round up. And always include your docs request. When you send this in an email, hey, John and Mary, congratulations, you're pre-approved. Here's your pre-approval letter. Guess what? I still need to get your 2021 W-2 from, your whatever job. I need to get these 3 items, put your docs request, and then put these instructions. What instructions? These instructions. John and Mary, as a reminder, don't apply for new credit. Your credit can be pulled anytime up to the closing of the loan. John and Mary, hey, be real careful. Don't miss any loan payments or credit card payments. Please keep paying your bills on time. Don't make any large purchases. Don't switch jobs. And don't put any money in your account that's a large deposit without talking to me. So I put that at the bottom of the emails to that borrower anytime I send a pre-approval letter. It's standard format. If you use Outlook, you can type up a little signature. You can put your docs request in a signature in Outlook, and you can put that at the bottom of your docs request. Okay, so all you got to do, you open Outlook and you hit signatures. You open an email and you hit signatures, and it's called docs request. You save it that way and go that way. And guys, I'm not the smartest computer guy in the world. If I could figure that out, so can you. Okay, now let's talk about the pre-approval letter. Why do I have somebody in jail? Because I'm going to strongly recommend you use a format approved by your company. Okay, don't make your own pre-approval letter. Okay, I've got 3 rules when it comes to the pre-approval letter. Use a format approved by your company. Strongly recommend you use a format approved by your company. I really recommend you use a format approved by your company. Don't make your own stuff. Okay, that's a big, with pre-approval letters, you can get into trouble. A lot of times there's verbiage in that pre-approval letter that protects you. So please protect yourself. All right. So we've issued a pre-approval letter. We know the income. We know the payment. We ran DU. We're in pretty good shape. We know we got a deal here. Here's what's next. I'm going to say, Miss Realtor, Mr. Realtor, hey, when you submit an offer, copy me on it. Copy me on the email that you send to the listing agent, and then you follow up with the listing agent. Guys, I even go a step further. A lot of times I'll tell my realtors, listen, because my pre-approval letter has a TBD in there. It says TBD, Orlando, Florida, $340,000 FHA purchase, conventional purchase, owner occupied, whatever it is. I like to put an address when I make the pre-approval letter. And if they're going to offer $343,000, I want it to say 343. I don't want it to say 340 or 345. So I tell my realtors, listen, I don't mind. I'll customize that letter. When you're ready to submit an offer, let me know. And I'll customize the letter for you and include the property address and the exact offer price. It goes a long way towards serving your realtor. And it also gives you the opportunity to build a stronger service relationship with your realtor, right? Okay, so now what? I'm also following up on my docs request. Is this customer an A or a B? Okay, A or B. What I mean by that, an A customer is someone who could go under contract right now. They're actively shopping. They're making good offers. they're not being super, super ridiculous picky. They're a solid borrower. Okay. A B customer is someone who maybe they're doing some lowball offers. You know, you and I could look at that customer and say, yeah, they're probably not going to get an offer accepted right now. You know, they're asking for a lot of money in seller concessions or whatever it is. And you just sort of know it's one of those ones the realtor sort of rolls their eyes a little bit. And they're like, well, I don't have anyone else to work with right now, but I feel like they're a little bit of a waste of time, but I'm not super busy, so I'm going to do these offers for them anyway, right? So they're a B. What's the difference? If it's an A, I am going to be on top of them with any outstanding document requests. Okay. If you're in you know, my branch and my team, then you've probably already communicated with Xylette, who's our right-hand closing coordinator, and she knows what docs are outstanding and she's chasing the customer for you. Okay. If you don't have a Xylette, then you're chasing that customer. You're making sure those documents are in the file, because what if they go under contract today? My performance standard is 24 hours to submit the loan. Meaning, if you're under contract today, within 24 hours, by this time tomorrow, you should be able to get that loan pushed into your setup team. Okay, it should be out of your hands and moving forward to the next step. Okay, whatever that is in your process. Keep your file ready for submission. Keep them ready for submission. Updated docs. Watch the rates, because if the rates jump a quarter of a point, you got to ask yourself, did that affect which of my prequals? Because God willing, you're busy. You've got 10, 15 prequals out there shopping for houses. So you got to know which ones of those did it affect my prequals for anybody? Do I have to make an adjustment? Touch base with your customers and your realtors every week. Okay. That's really important, guys. If you ask a realtor, and that's something we're going to talk about in one of our other classes, is kind of how to talk to a realtor. If you ask any realtor out there, what do you hate the most about your mortgage partners? What's the biggest disappointment you have? What's the biggest challenge you have? It's going to be communication. We don't talk, we suck. We don't answer our phones. We don't call people back. We don't text people back. We don't send emails. We ghost them. It's unfortunately, I'm not saying you or me, I'm saying our colleagues. You're obviously a little bit different because you're here, you know, trying to improve yourself and working and sharing your knowledge and your own ideas, because I learned from you as much as you might learn from me. So thank you for that. But I got to tell you, don't assume your realtor knows what you're doing. You have to communicate with them. Touch base weekly. Guys, that's pretty much it. Contact information there. My WhatsApp number, meetup group, and the website. Upcoming, if you are in the area, July 26th, 3 to 6 p.m., we have happy hour. And it's not, I usually do just a straight up happy hour. This is a drink and learn. So we're gonna have a casual chat with some industry leading real estate investment experts. We're gonna have some folks out there that specialize in real estate investing. They're gonna be there sharing drinks, maybe a couple appetizers, and hanging out in Dr. Phillips here in sunny Orlando. Except today, well, no, it's getting sunny out. There's my contact information. Does anybody have any questions? Hey, Frenchie, to answer your question, how many people? Somewhere between, like last week was close to 20. It just depends. It depends on who's available. I think it spoils a few people that we started recording them, and because there was a lot of views of that last recorded meeting. So any questions? Any other questions? I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to stop recording if I can figure that out.